Welcome to Europe's elite football competition, the UEFA Champions League, where the biggest teams in Europe, year by year, go on a hunt for that illustrious trophy. The winner, well, is the winner of the Champions League. But how did we go from the invitational tournament that let European countries' champions play against each other to probably the most prestigious tournament in the world, besides maybe the World Cup? This video is all about it. But before diving in, we have to go through a backstory. How did it all start? Why and how did we go from an invitational tournament to one of the biggest competitions in the world? You think UEFA just wanted to make a bit more money? Maybe. But the entire Champions League thing is not even their idea. What really happened is that a certain editor of L'Equipe, Gabriel Anot, sat in some cafe in Paris. He was reading a bunch of reports from his colleagues who went to South America and watched a certain tournament called South American Championship of Champions. Now, what was it, you may ask? Basically, a form of Copa Libertadores before Copa Libertadores. Gabriel read all the praises and thought, we can make a tournament out of this. So he went to L'Equipe and they liked it. Then he went to UEFA and they were like, maybe? Probably. Oh wait, Wolverhampton just declared themselves as Club World Champions, just because they won a couple of friendlies. So yeah, we actually do that. Get the teams involved. And so, it began. The European Cup started in 1955, and it was a highly successful competition. Various iconic teams from Europe were ready to take the crown in a very simple knockout tournament. 32 teams, 2-leg ties, anyone can play anyone at any stage. And they win. Very easy, right? It was. But in the 1980s, this format was basically getting irrelevant and quite dire. Throughout the years, only the champions and title holders could take part, which massively limited the amount of games between the elite teams. And yes, playing in the European Cup was a huge deal. But say, Napoli could get Real Madrid in the first round and, well, get knocked out. Yes, this actually happened in 1987. A certain Italian man by the name of Silvio Berlusconi felt a chance to make the European Cup much more exciting, guarantee much more games with and between the top teams, broadcast them to the entire world, put the Champions League brand everywhere, and as a result,
Here comes the money.
which Silvio Berlusconi realized how much of the clubs and UEFA were missing out on. And so, he came up with the idea of a competition that basically was meant to be a Super League, which failed. But the idea still lived on, and piled the pressure on UEFA. You see, there was another UEFA competition hosted at the time, the UEFA Cup, which today is called the Europa League. And it was proving to be more and more successful, since this was the competition most of the top teams took part in. Needless to say, in the 80s, some of the winners of the UEFA Cup were Napoli, Real Madrid, who won it twice, Bayer Leverkusen, or Tottenham Hotspur. Oh, and there was also the Swedish side, IFK Göteborg, who won it twice. And what about the Champions Cup? It only invited domestic leagues champions, making the opportunities for teams to play in pretty limited. There was also a third competition, the Cup Winners' Cup, which only invited the domestic cup winners. And we'll not talk about the Intertoto Cup thing because nobody gets it anyway. You can tell the tournament format needed fixing, and UEFA decided to finally do something about it. In the 1991-92 season, a group stage was introduced for the first time. It included 2 groups of 4 teams, in which every team played each other twice, and the winners of each group, Sampdoria and Barcelona, took part in the final, and the latter one won the European Cup in extra time. But during this time of the final and before it, UEFA and the sports marketing agency, called Television Event and Media Marketing, decided to start on a new journey. They made a project that turned the competition into the entire brand, with its custom logo, the focus on putting the branding everywhere, securing sponsors and TV rights, giving this thing some brand new identity, and told this man, by the name of Tony Britton, to create an anthem, which turned out to be one of the most iconic pieces of music of all time. And so, it happened. The UEFA Champions League was prepared to launch. And for those wondering where Silvio Berlusconi was in all of this, he gave an idea, but was not really involved in making it a reality. But he was still trying to convince the chairman from other top clubs to create what would be a Super League. Oh, how familiar. At least his club, AC Milan, became a regular participant in the UEFA's elite club competition. But now, let's dive in, because European football's landscape is about to change. Europe's elite club competition is about to begin. Welcome to the UEFA Champions League. The format of the new tournament was fairly simple. Only the domestic champions could partake, and 8 of them would take part in 2 groups of 4. The winners of each group were going to play the final in Munich, but not the Allianz Arena, because it wasn't even a thing back then. The final was played in the Olympiastadion instead, in which Olympique de Marseille's defender Basile Boli scored the long goal against AC Milan, leading to the first ever victory for the French club in Europe's elite tournament. The top scorer played for PSV Eindhoven, who finished last in their group. We're talking about Romario, who scored 7 goals. We will also create the best underdog performance for a team that finished way further than expected, and the first winners of it will be IFK Göteborg, who finished second in Group B, ahead of Porto and Eindhoven, which technically makes them the semi-finalists of that year's Champions League. And now, it's time to reveal the most important thing: the money. The final edition of the European Cup generated a revenue of 10 million euros. The first edition of the Champions League, 74 million euros. And this was just a start. You might be wondering, where the heck is Marseille in this edition? They won it last year. And you, my friend, need to know that in the French league, in the 1992-93 season, something happened. Marseille was involved in the title fight, and 6 days after matchday 36 of the Division 1 season, they were going to play the UEFA Champions League final against AC Milan. Marseille chairman Bernard Tapie wanted his players to be fresh for the final. He still had the 1991 European Cup final fresh in his memory, where Marseille had 2 players unavailable, and Crvena Zvezda from Serbia, then Yugoslavia, took the crown. To ensure that, Bernard asked 3 Valencian players, Jorge Burruchaga, Jacques Glassman and Christophe Robert, to underperform in the direct encounter. Glassman refused, but the other 2 accepted the offer, worth 250,000 French francs. Christophe Robert convinced the team to lose the game, which Valenciennes did lose, 1-0, and Marseille clinched the league title. Right after the match, following Jacques Glassman of Valenciennes reporting to the referee Jean-Marie Venil that the match is fixed, the police walked into Marseille's locker room, and the referee, who was not involved in any of the shenanigans, wrote down the possible match fixing in his post-match report. Marseille players had nothing to do with the bribery, but Christophe Robert did, which he admitted to 2 weeks later. The end result? Marseille was stripped from the league title, banned from the 1993-94 Champions League season, and a year later was relegated to Ligue 2. PSG was offered the title, but they refused due to their sponsor, Canal+, having worries about its reputation in the south of France. So, there was no Ligue 1 winner that year, and the Champions League slot went to 3rd place Monaco. And speaking of the Champions League itself, who won it in 1994? It was AC Milan, who got a dominant 4-0 win against Barcelona in Olympic Stadium in Athens. There wasn't really any upset though, unless you want one to be an Icelandic club, Ibrote Bandalak Ekranes, who got a 1-0 win at home over Feyenoord in the first leg of the first qualifying round. They still lost the aggregate 3-1. The top scorer? There were 2. Winton Ruffer, a New Zealand striker from Werder Bremen, and Ronald Koeman, yes, Ronald Koeman, a Dutch centre-back from Barcelona. He used his set-piece magic to become the joint top scorer. Both of the players scored 8 goals in this year's competition. New reforms! UEFA extended the group stage. We went from 8 to 16 teams, and in the knockout stages, a quarter-final appeared for the first time. This also helped make way for the top 8 teams to start their campaign directly in the group stage, without having to go through the qualifying rounds. The bad news is, any country from outside the top 24 in the coefficients could not partake in the competition anymore. Places like Norway, Slovakia, Bulgaria or Finland were effectively left out. Also, did you know that Luxembourg was 24th, yes, 24th in the coefficient rankings? I mean, this is huge, and they will take part in this Champions League edition. Their champions, Avenir Beggen, still got demolished by Galatasaray in the qualifying round, but we respect the effort. Meanwhile, Milan made it all the way to the final in Vienna again, starting with the 2nd place in the group stage, on goal difference, and after a points deduction against Casino Salzburg? They're owned by this little energy drink called Red Bull now. You might have heard of them. Rossoneri then went through Benfica and Paris Saint-Germain, and in the final they encountered their opponents from the group stage, AFC Ajax from Netherlands. However, this time, following an 85th minute strike from Patrick Kluivert, Milan lost 1-0. The youthful Ajax team was full of talent, with Edwin van der Sar, Frank de Boer, Edgar Davids, Clarence Seedorf, Jari Litmanen or Patrick Kluivert in the lineup. Some consider it to be one of the world's greatest teams, which may surprise the younger audience, who may only remember Ajax for a 2019 Champions League semi-final run and 2017 Europa League final against Manchester United, with any other European adventure ending up on a group stage or the first knockout round. The biggest upset? I want to give this title to a Croatian team, Hajduk Split, who went past a group stage of Benfica, Steaua Bucharest or Anderlecht. The top scorer? George Weah, who played for Paris Saint-Germain and scored 7 goals, and later on went to win the Ballon d'Or when it still meant something. This year only saw a minor reform. In the group stage, you were now awarded 3 points instead of 2 for a win. And who won, you may ask? The title holders Ajax made it to the final again. This time, they faced another Italian team in Juventus in an Italian stadium, the Stadio Olimpico in Rome. But despite having a top goal scorer of this year's UCL in Jari Litmanen, who also scored in the final, the Dutch side lost on penalties. This year, we're also saying hi to plenty of new countries. Denmark with Aalborg, Hungary with their champions Ferencváros, Grasshopper Zurich from Switzerland, and Legia Warsaw, the champions of Poland. Aalborg was rock bottom in the Group A, Ferencváros and Grasshopper were together in Group D, in which they both got knocked out, and Legia found their way past Rosenborg and Blackburn Rovers to make it to the quarter-final, where they lost to my yearly biggest underdog award winners, Panathinaikos. It looks like you cannot defend the Champions League title for some reason. This time, in the final in the Olympiastadion in Munich, Juventus took on Borussia Dortmund, in which Lars Ricken came from the bench and just 16 seconds later scored a spectacular goal, which won Dortmund's first ever Champions League. The biggest sensation? I'm calling it Rosenborg, who eliminated AC Milan in the group stage and got to the quarterfinals, where the Norwegian champions lost 3-1 on aggregate to Juventus. The top scorer? Bunch of people scored exactly 4 goals each this year, but there was one player who got 5, Milinko Pantic from Atletico Madrid, who got knocked out in the quarterfinals. Oh look, it's another reform. In the 97-98 season, for the first time in Champions League's history, the top 8 countries in the coefficient rankings had 2 teams partaking. And another big thing is allowing every single national champion to play in the qualifying rounds again, something only the top 24 nations could do until now. This actually made the Champions League again, and we're slowly starting to see it become the Super League as well. Though it doesn't help out that out of all of the clubs that took part in the first qualifying round, only 2 of them found their way to the group stage, Dynamo Kiev and FC Košice. So, we're saying hello to Slovakia. They got 0 points in the group stage, and were the first team to achieve this feat. But look at it, there's 6 groups. It is because the Champions League itself got larger, with 24 teams in the group stage now. The winner? The Mr. Champions League club. Real Madrid finally won 1-0 over Juventus, who lost their second consecutive final, this time in Amsterdam Arena. The underdogs? I'm giving this title to Dynamo Kiev, who went past Barrytown from Wales and Brøndby from Denmark in the qualifiers, and then won the Group C with PSV Eindhoven, Newcastle United and Barcelona. Top scorer? Alessandro Del Piero from Juventus, who scored 10 goals. You probably know what's gonna happen. Yes, I know. This is the year when in the Camp Nou, Manchester United made a historic comeback, scoring 2 goals from corners in the final minutes against Bayern Munich. I know, you waited for this, it's done. But now, say hi to Finland, and as someone who would rather enjoy watching some lower leagues, this is huge news. HJK Helsinki defeated the Armenian champions FC Yerevan and caused a huge upset against French champions FC Metz to qualify to Group F, with Kaiserslautern, Benfica and PSV Eindhoven. And they even had a chance to reach the knockouts, winning and drawing against Benfica and getting a point against Kaiserslautern in the process. I consider them to be the biggest upset, even bigger than Olympiacos Piraeus, who won the group with Croatia, now Dinamo Zagreb, Porto and Ajax, and made it to the quarterfinals. The top scorer? 2 of them, Andriy Shevchenko from Dynamo Kiev and Dwight York from Manchester United, who both scored 8 goals. The Champions League got even larger now. 32 teams now partake in the group stage. More teams from top nations were also invited. Remember how only the runners-up could join? Yeah, now even a 4th placed team can get involved. And on top of that, it's no longer over for the third team in each group. That third team is now dropping to the UEFA Cup, and the top 2 didn't go to the knockouts. Instead, they played in another group stage. 4 groups of 4, 6 games, home and away, and the top 2 goes to the quarterfinal. But first, we're saying hi to Slovenia, whose champions Maribor got the country to the group stage for the first time. And they did well for themselves, getting a draw against Bayer Leverkusen and winning over Dynamo Kiev, both away from home. And who won it all? Real Madrid, who won over Valencia and Stade de France, and became the first team to win the rebranded Champions League twice. The biggest underdogs? Think I have to give it to the giants of Spanish football, Valencia, after all. They took part in the Champions League for the first time since 1971 and instantly got to the final. Top scorer? Actually, top scorers, we have 3 of them. Mario Jardel from Porto, Rivaldo from Barcelona, and Raúl, who played for Real Madrid. Valencia lost the Champions League final again, but this time it wasn't Real Madrid who won. They got eliminated by Bayern Munich in the semi-final, and the Germans took revenge on last year's defeat at the exact same stage. And you guessed it, Bayern won the final at San Siro, and the winner was decided on penalties. The deciding one was missed by Mauricio Pellegrino. Fun fact, all goals scored in this final were from penalties. Real Madrid at least had a top scorer in their team, Raúl, who scored 7 goals. The biggest underdogs? Galatasaray, the only team from outside England, Germany or Spain to make it to the quarterfinals, after getting past the likes of AC Milan in the second group stage. Though I must say anyone bringing up Deportivo La Coruña makes a valid claim too. Deportivo La Coruña got to the quarterfinals again, getting past Juventus and Arsenal in the second group stage and only lost to Manchester United. So we already have the underdog award. But I also want to point at Panathinaikos, who also made it to the quarters in front of Porto and Sparta Prague. Panathinaikos got knocked out by Barcelona, and look, it's El Clásico, the first El Clásico in Champions League's history, but not the first in Europe, because Real and Barca played each other in the semi-final of the European Cup in 1960 and the round of 16 a year later. But now, it was time for an elite match in the 21st century, which Real Madrid won 3-1 and played Bayer Leverkusen in the final at Hampden Park, which witnessed one of the most iconic goals in football history. We're talking about Zinedine Zidane, who scored a perfect left-footed volley from a floated cross from Roberto Carlos. That goal was also the winning goal, which gave Los Blancos its 9th Champions League. The top scorer was Ruud van Nistelrooy, who scored 10 goals en route to the semi-final with Manchester United. But next year, I think we might see Real getting that 10th trophy very soon. We did not see Real getting that 10th trophy very soon, but we did see one successful defending of the crown, the one made by Ruud van Nistelrooy, who this time scored 12 goals for Manchester United. But his team, despite their stadium hosting a Champions League final, was stopped by Real Madrid in the quarterfinals, who got stopped by Juventus in the semi-finals, who got stopped on penalties by AC Milan in the final, with just a 3-2 result in the shootout. Meanwhile, in the earlier stages, oh look, it's Maccabi Haifa from Israel, a new country in the Champions League, and what's more, they were close from getting promoted to the second group stage, in which I found the winners of our underdog award. We're talking about FC Basel. A Swiss team hasn't played in the Champions League group stages since 1996, and once Basel entered, they got level on points of Juventus and Deportivo La Coruña, almost fighting their way to the quarterfinals. The Champions League is finally normal again. Instead of the second group stage, this time, the format became very simple. 8 groups of 4, round-robin matches home and away, and we jump straight into the knockouts. Who used this system to their advantage? Real? Manchester United? Bayern? No. Monaco and FC Porto. And FC Porto got a fairly dominant win in Gelsenkirchen, 3-0 to be exact. This win completed a masterclass from the coach, Jose Mourinho, who then got a big offer from Chelsea after the season, which he accepted. Automatically, this victory gave the Portuguese side the yearly Underdogs Award. The top scorer this time was a Real Madrid player, technically, because Fernando Morientes, who scored 9 goals this season, played for Monaco on loan and even knocked out Real Madrid in the quarterfinals, scoring 1 goal in each game. Oh yes, I know where this is going. You already know, you don't have to tell me. Ruud van Nistelrooy became the top scorer for the 3rd time. This time, he scored 8 goals for Manchester United. which only helped the club advance to the round of 16, where the Red Devils were stopped by AC Milan, a team that was a part of a couple iconic moments that only happened in 2005. AC Milan played the quarterfinal against Inter Milan, in which they got awarded a win via a walkover, because in the 72nd minute, the Inter fans started throwing bottles and flares onto the pitch, and one of the latter ones hit Milan's goalkeeper, Dida, leading to a match being cut short and UEFA awarding the win to the Rossoneri. We at least got an iconic photo out of this game. With a win on away goals against PSV Eindhoven, also our Underdog Award winners, Milan went to Istanbul and played Liverpool, whose road to the final also had some controversies. One of them was a ghost goal scored by Luis Garcia in the 4th minute of the semi-final against Chelsea. The ball clearly did not cross the line, but the referee, Luboš Michal from Slovakia, awarded the goal anyway. In the final itself, with Paolo Maldini scoring 50 seconds in, and a halftime score at 3-0, it was obvious that Milan is going to win after just 2 years. Well, think again! Because not only Liverpool came from behind within 7 minutes, but they also went to extra time. Jerzy Dudek made heroic saves, and in the penalty shootout, the Polish goalkeeper's dancing helped him save 3 penalties and win the Reds their 5th Champions League. This is probably the greatest comeback in the history of football, and one that will be remembered for generations. In the 2005 Champions League final, Andriy Shevchenko, Milan's striker, was stopped by Jerzy Dudek in the deciding penalty shootout, giving Liverpool the win. A year later, Andriy won a top scorer award with 9 goals, and I guess it's a decent consolation. Milan didn't get past Barcelona in the semi-final, and at Stade de France, the Spanish team took on Arsenal. This game was looking like an Arsenal win for a majority of the game, despite an early red card for Jens Lehmann, the goalkeeper. But in the 76th minute, Samuel Eto'o made a huge equalizer, and Giuliano Belletti scored a winning goal, and his only one in his Barcelona career. But there is one more story I would like to mention from that season. There was a team in Slovakia called Artmedia Bratislava, who started from the first qualifying round. Any serious achievement wasn't looking likely, but the Slovaks went past Kairat Almaty from Kazakhstan in extra time, then stunned Celtic at home with a 5-0 win, which they almost bottled anyway, and won on penalties against Partizan Belgrade to find their way to the Champions League group stage. Artmedia landed in Group H and stunned the world again, winning away at Porto, getting a draw at home, and drawing Rangers both in Bratislava and Glasgow. This allowed them to continue the dream run in the UEFA Cup, but there they got knocked out in the first hurdle by Levski Sofia from Bulgaria. This wonderful story would be a one-off though, and it's only 2 years later. The owner Ivan Kmotrik and the main sponsor left the club, leading to a downfall all the way to the 5th year. The club is now reinstated as FC Petržalka, and they are playing in Slovakia's 2nd division. History doesn't usually repeat itself, but it really likes to rhyme. PSV Eindhoven goes on a wild run, Chelsea meets Liverpool, again in the semi-finals, and gets knocked out by the Reds again, this time on penalties, where Pepe Reina showed world-class skills by saving 2 spot kicks. This led to a piece of absolute poetry. A Champions League final between Milan and Liverpool, this time in Olympic Stadium in Athens, Greece. But this time, Milan, who had Filippo Inzaghi scoring a brace, did not let the victory slip, and an 18th minute goal from Dirk Kuyt would not change a thing. Milan are back on top, and their star that way became Kaká, who scored 10 goals on the route to the final and became this season's top scorer. But he did not score a goal against a Bulgarian team, probably because Milan never played Levski Sofia in the group stage. And speaking of Levski, they are the first Bulgarian team that made it this far, so say hello to a new country, Bulgaria this time. The biggest underdogs? Celtic. The Scottish side joined the Champions League knockouts for the first time since 1974. For the 3rd time in 4 years, in the Champions League semi-final, Liverpool played Chelsea. But this time, the 3rd time's the charm. It took the extra time, but Chelsea finally made it to the Champions League final against Manchester United at Luzhniki in Moscow. The final saw the stars of both teams scoring. Frank Lampard for Chelsea, and for Manchester, a powerful header scored by this talented Portuguese player called Cristiano Ronaldo. Think you may have heard of him. 1-0 until the end of the game? This means a penalty shootout, in which the top scorer of this edition, who scored 8 goals, was stopped by Petr Cech. His name? Cristiano Ronaldo. By this point, I'm sure you might have heard of him. Everyone else scored, which meant John Terry, Chelsea's captain, in the deciding kick, could give the Blues its first Champions League. He slipped and hit the post. Nicolas Anelka had his penalty saved by Edwin van der Sar from United, and thus Manchester lifted the trophy again, for the first time since 1999. Chelsea's then owner Roman Abramovich had a dream, but it wasn't fulfilled just yet. Also, big shout out to Fenerbahce from Turkey. The champions of that country made it past the likes of PSV Eindhoven and Sevilla to go to the quarterfinal against Chelsea, in which the Turkish team won the first game. Just imagine if they kept that lead. They're getting that underdog award anyway. In the 2007-8 season, Barcelona was eliminated by Manchester United in the semi-finals. Ending on the disappointing third place in the league, the manager Frank Rijkaard was shown the doors and was replaced by this young coach by the name of Pep Guardiola. You might have heard of him, mainly because this man took over, rebuilt the squad, introduced a tiki-taka, and gave a chance for a certain Lionel Messi to become world's greatest. You also might have heard of this man. What Pep Guardiola has done is that he moved Lionel from a right wing to the center, as a false 9 to be exact. This change made Lionel score 9 goals to become a top scorer and helped Barcelona win the Champions League trophy. It was against Manchester United at Stadio Olimpico in Rome, which included one of the most iconic headers from Lionel Messi. Barcelona also won all available trophies in 2009. The Champions League, La Liga, Copa del Rey, both Spanish and UEFA Super Cups, and the FIFA Club World Cup. This road was not without controversies though, most notably in the second leg of the semi-final against Chelsea, where prior to a 90th minute winner from Andres Iniesta, we have seen a couple of questionable refereeing decisions. Some were even outright wrong, bringing plenty of suspicions from the fans of Chelsea and other English teams, and some nasty comments from Didier Drogba. And yes, Liverpool played Chelsea again, in the quarters this time around. And in those quarters, we also saw the Underdog Award winners, Porto from Portugal, who were stopped by one of the most magnificent goals in recent history, scored by Cristiano Ronaldo of course. We also have 2 new countries in the group stage. Bate Borisov from Belarus joined Group H, and a Cypriot team called Anorthosis Famagusta joined Group B. Both finished at the bottom, but got a couple points each, so it's not a bad performance after all. Also, am I the only person to realize Romania was the 7th best league in Europe at the time? I'm not joking. The 3 clubs from Bucharest, Dinamo Steaua and Rapid, all advanced to UEFA Cup group stage in the 2005-06 season, and the latter 2 of them won their groups. In the knockout stages, Rapid defeated Hertha and Hamburger from Germany, while Steaua went past Heerenveen and Real Betis. This led to a Bucharest derby in the UEFA Cup quarter-final, in which Steaua won on away goals, and in the semi-finals, won the first leg against Middlesbrough, adding on the very next 06-07 season, in which Dinamo and Rapid made it to the group stages again, with Steaua joining in the knockouts from a Champions League group where they finished 3rd, and Dinamo finishing 2nd in their group in the UEFA Cup. Romania scored a total of 28 points into coefficient rankings in these 2 years, which skyrocketed them from around 25th to 7th place. Lionel Messi became a top scorer again, with 8 goals, but Barcelona was knocked out in the semi-finals by Inter Milan, who were led by Jose Mourinho. This season witnessed one of the most iconic moments in the Champions League though. One of the players representing Inter Milan was Zlatan Ibrahimovic. He was, because before the 2009-10 season, he left for Barcelona in ambition to win the Champions League. But it was Inter who won the Champions League, 2-0 against Bayern Munich at Santiago Bernabeu in Madrid. History is very ironic, I must admit. Lyon is the team I'm calling the biggest upset. The French team went all the way to the semi-final, where they couldn't get past Bayern. But the one thing I want to mention about the season is a reform to the qualifying path. Before, it was very simple 3 qualifying rounds. Now, UEFA, under the administration of Michel Platini, introduced 2 different paths to qualify, one for the champions and one for the teams from stronger leagues. This idea came with an intention to allow teams from lower ranked nations to join Europe's elite. And I must admit, I really like it. Žilina finally made it to the Champions League, let's go! And got 0 points in the group with Marseille, Chelsea and Spartak Moscow. But this Champions League campaign was far from done, with a couple of sensational results, like FC Copenhagen from Denmark progressing to the knockout stages, just like Shakhtar Donetsk, who won the group with Arsenal, Braga and Partizan Belgrade, and then got past Roma in the round of 16. Only Barcelona in the quarters could stop the Ukrainians, and it led to El Clasico in the semi-finals. So Shakhtar wins our underdog award. But what we've seen in the El Clasico that happened in the semi-final is another legendary solo run from this season's top scorer, Lionel Messi, who scored 12 goals this campaign. Also, Sergio Busquets probably gave the easiest assist of his career. A semi-final win gave Barca a chance to play in the Champions League final, where their opponents at Wembley were Manchester United, in which Barcelona, with their star Lionel Messi, just made their own show, winning 3-1 and winning the third Champions League in 6 years. Lionel Messi became a Champions League top scorer for the 4th time in a row. With Argentinians' 14 goals, FC Barcelona had the chance to reach another final. But in the final minutes of the semi-final, the team was chasing a win against Chelsea at any cost. However, in the final minutes, Fernando Torres, though past his prime, still found himself in front of just Victor Valdes, got past him and scored into an empty net, leading Chelsea to the final. Quite a bit of return of favours from 2009. For the final itself, Chelsea went to Allianz Arena in Munich and met the actual home team, Bayern. Bayern looked eager to redeem themselves for a final loss in 2010, and they looked like doing so, with Thomas Müller scoring a header in the 83rd minute. However, we don't remember Müller's performance. We remember Didier Drogba's powerful header in the 88th minute, Arjen Robben missing a penalty in extra time, 2 misses from Bayern players in the penalty shootout, and Drogba's final verdict from the spot kick. He's done it. And they've done it. Chelsea, after heartbreaks from 2008 and 2009, were finally champions. This took way too long for the English side. And Bayern? I think they will be hungry for revenge sometime soon. At the same time, we have to give the shout out to the likes of FC Basel, who knocked out Manchester United from Group C and advanced to the knockout stages. Basel even won the first leg of the round of 16 against Bayern, but was no match in the second, to put it mildly. But the Swiss team stands nowhere near the achievement of Apoel from Cyprus. That team not only won their group with Zenit, Shakhtar Donetsk and Porto, but also defeated Lyon on penalties in the round of 16. Yes, a side from Cyprus made it to the Champions League quarter-final, and though Apoel were no match for Real Madrid, they're winning the biggest upset award. Just imagine we're just a few minutes away from that team being Wisła Kraków instead. A Wembley final again? And this time it was all German. We genuinely could have had an El Clasico in the Champions League final. But Robert Lewandowski from Borussia Dortmund stole the show in the semi-final against Real Madrid, scoring 4 goals, and Bayern absolutely demolished Barcelona 7-0 on aggregate. Which means it's their Klassiker instead, in which Mario Mandzukic scored for Bayern and Ilkay Gündogan converted his penalty for Dortmund. Nearing the end of the match, Borussia was doing everything they could to keep the result and go to extra time. But in the 18th minute, Arjen Robben, who missed a penalty a year before in extra time, found himself in Dortmund's penalty box and sent its keeper, Roman Weidenfeller, the wrong way to score the winning goal and win Bayern the Champions League trophy. The club's first since 2001. Underdog award? Galatasaray from Turkey, who made it to the quarterfinals, getting past Schalke in the process. And this time, the top scorer was not Lionel Messi. For the first time since 2008, it was Cristiano Ronaldo who took the crown, with 12 goals. I'm sure this was just a one-off case though. Cristiano Ronaldo scored 17 goals in a single Champions League season. Yup, that's the most anyone has ever scored in a season. An absolute record. The Portuguese man's goals helped his side, Real Madrid, get past a pretty German route to the final, with Schalke in the round of 16, Borussia Dortmund in the quarters, and Bayern in the semi-final. On the second side of the pitch in Estadio da Luz in Lisbon, Portugal, was Atletico? Yes. They went past AC Milan, Barcelona and Chelsea to reach their second Champions League final, and for the first time in the Champions League's history, we witnessed a city derby. It was a Madrid derby, in which Diego Godin made his best effort to stop Real Madrid from winning the 10th Champions League trophy. Atletico was leading for most of the game, and with every passing minute, it seemed they will get their hands on their first UCL win. But in the stoppage time, Modric made a pinpoint cross to Sergio Ramos, who equalized it for Los Blancos. Atletico players were exhausted at this point, and it showed in extra time. Gareth Bale, Marcelo and Cristiano Ronaldo from a penalty finished the job, and Real completed what's called La Decima, the 10th. Real Madrid was also the first club to win the Champions League this many times. Real did it with one of the best lineups in football history, with the Bale, Benzema, Cristiano trio up front. Underdog award? Galatasaray again, this time getting past Juventus in the group stage and narrowly being knocked out by Chelsea. But was the Real Madrid's attacking trio as good as MSN? Messi, Suarez, Neymar. Lionel and Neymar both became top scorers for the season, alongside Cristiano Ronaldo. They all scored 10 goals each. Cristiano could only give a Champions League semi-final, where he scored a goal in each leg, but it was not enough for Alvaro Morata, who did the same, and Carlos Tevez added one in the home of Juventus. On the other side of the Olympiastadion in Berlin was Barcelona, who defeated Manchester City, Paris Saint-Germain and Bayern. And it was Blaugrana's show. In the final Barcelona appearance for its homegrown legend Xavi, he didn't score, but Rakitic, Suarez and in the 97th minute Neymar did. The winners were obviously Barcelona, for the 4th time in a decade. It really was a massive team in that time period, this time managed by Luis Enrique. This win also marked a treble for Barcelona. Blaugrana won the league, the domestic cup and now the Champions League. It was the second treble in the club's history, and they were the first team in Europe to do it for the second time. The underdog award? FC Basel, who eliminated Liverpool in the group stage and put up a fight against Porto in the round of 16. Barcelona got knocked out by Atletico Madrid in the quarter-final. 2 years before, they were also knocked out by Atletico, and also in the quarters. Then, Barcelona's midfielder Xavi said the grass on Atletico's pitch was too high. Now, Barcelona's former midfielder Xavi said Atletico's style is not the style for the big teams, despite already playing in Qatar at the time. But first, a very slight reform. From now on, the Europa League title winners get a guaranteed slot to play in the next season's Champions League. The first beneficiaries? Sevilla. Alongside them, say hi to Kazakhstan. Their champions Astana qualified to the group stage, and the Kazakh team joined the group with Atletico Madrid, Benfica and Galatasaray, in which they got 4 draws. A pretty respectable effort. Atletico won that group and made it all the way to the Champions League final, and again, on the other side of the San Siro in Milan, was Real Madrid, who went past Roma, Wolfsburg and Manchester City. In the final itself, Real Madrid scored first, even with Sergio Ramos being offside. But it's not like Atletico was robbed of the victory. Antoine Griezmann had a penalty at the start of the second half, which he missed. Thankfully for Atleti, Yannick Carrasco found a way to score, which led to a penalty shootout, in which Juan Fran hit the post for Atletico, allowing Cristiano Ronaldo to score a deciding penalty and win Real Madrid their 11th Champions League. It already was a record by a fair margin, but Real is now only interested in extending it. Cristiano Ronaldo became a top scorer, almost matching his own goal scoring record. He scored 16 goals this time around. The underdog award goes to PSV Eindhoven, who eliminated Manchester United in the group stage and only lost out to Atletico Madrid in the round of 16 on penalties. Cristiano Ronaldo became a top scorer again, with 12 goals to his tally this season. This season also marked a huge milestone. Cristiano became the first player ever to score 100 goals. He scored his 100th goal as a completion of the hat-trick against Bayern Munich in the semi-final, which also was filled with some controversies. On the other side of the Millennium Stadium in Cardiff, the capital of Wales, was Juventus, for whom it was the second Champions League final in 3 years. They went past Porto, Barcelona and Monaco, the last ones being our underdog award winners. They had a perfect mix of experience and youth with Kylian Mbappe as a main star, and reached the Champions League semi-final, knocking out Manchester City and Borussia Dortmund in the process. But the real underdog story is Legia Warsaw. The Polish team walked into a group stage for the first time in 20 years, and even got a draw against Real Madrid, and eliminated Sporting Club de Portugal to qualify for the Europa League knockout stages. And moving on to Juve's quarter-final opponents, I know you will rush into the comments section to cook me if I don't mention a certain round of 16 fixture. This is where Paris Saint-Germain got drawn against FC Barcelona. It seemed like an equal matchup, until PSG scored 4 goals at home in the first leg, making it a near certain win. Nobody expected what would happen in Barcelona a few weeks later. Despite scoring 1 more goal at Camp Nou, PSG still bottled the aggregate. When Edinson Cavani scored in the 62nd minute, it was already a 3-5 result on advantage to PSG. But in the final 7 minutes, Neymar scored a brace, and with the last kick of the game, Barcelona's right back Sergi Roberto rushed into the penalty area and scored a deciding goal which completed the biggest comeback in Champions League's history. And in the final, Real absolutely demolished Juventus 4-1, but from this particular match, I only remember a single highlight. A spectacular play from Juventus, which led to the Italian club striker Mario Mandzukic scoring a brilliant equalizer. This was the first time in the Champions League's history when a team won the competition twice in a row, and of course, it had to be its most successful team, Real Madrid. Let's go back to that group stage where Legia eliminated Sporting. Sporting made it to the Champions League group stage and finished in Europa League quarterfinals this season. And Legia was eliminated by Astana from Kazakhstan in the qualifiers, and in the Europa League qualifying round, they were eliminated by Sheriff Tiraspol from Moldova. That's a downfall and a half. But now we're returning to the serious matters. We're saying hello to Azerbaijan. Karabakh FK became the country's first side to reach the Champions League group stage. They got 2 points in their group, both being draws against Atletico Madrid. Juventus tried to make revenge for last year's final against Real Madrid, but ultimately lost in the quarter-final, with probably the greatest Champions League goal of all time, scored by Cristiano Ronaldo. Bayern in the semi-finals? Again, penalty controversies, and a blunder from Bayern's goalkeeper Sven Ulreich sent Real to NSC Olimpijski in Kiev, Ukraine. On the other side, for the first time since 2007, Liverpool made it all the way to the final. The Reds demolished Porto and Manchester City, and got past Roma in the semi-finals. Speaking of Roma, this time, they made a comeback and a half against Barcelona. Despite losing 4-1 in the first leg at Catalonia, with 2 own goals, they still won 3-0 in Stadio Olimpico and advanced on away goals rule. The deciding goal scorers, Daniele De Rossi and Kostas Manolas, who both scored an own goal in the first leg. They still didn't get past Liverpool, and the final itself was pretty controversial. This includes Liverpool star winger Mohamed Salah getting injured in a duel with Real Madrid's Sergio Ramos in the first half. Some say it could have been done on purpose, but I'm not putting in any allegations in this video. But what's a fact is that in the second half, Liverpool totally collapsed. Loris Karius wanted to throw a ball to his teammate, but Karim Benzema intercepted the throw and scored. Liverpool's Sadio Mane scored an equalizer, but just a couple minutes later, Gareth Bale came into the pitch for Real Madrid. And 2 minutes after he entered it, he scored an overhead kick to give Real the lead. Nearing the end of the game, Gareth scored again, this time from a long shot, though Loris Karius made an error trying to catch the ball. Real Madrid won the Champions League for the 3rd time in a row, making history, which will be very hard to repeat. But rumors are circulating their starman, Cristiano Ronaldo, who also became a top scorer for the record-breaking 6th time in a row, this time with 15 goals, may be leaving for a new challenge. Just like the coach Zinedine Zidane, who was managing Real during their entire way to a three-peat, claiming the club needs a change. The biggest underdog award goes to Shakhtar Donetsk after all. The Ukrainian side eliminated Napoli and Feyenoord in the group stage, and almost got past Roma in the round of 16. Cristiano Ronaldo left Real Madrid for Juventus for 100 million euros. Now let's move on to the format of the Champions League. If you ask that very important question, when did the Champions League basically become the European Super League? I guess it's the 2018-19 season. The top nations had guaranteed group stage slots since nearly the start of the tournament. It was a single slot in the late 90s, 2 in 2000s, and 3 in 2010s. The second, third and/or fourth teams still had to go through the qualifying rounds. And now, the top 4 nations, England, Spain, Italy and Germany, had 4 guaranteed group stage slots, and 5th France had 3. But what about Cristiano and his new club? Juventus lost to one of the biggest surprise packages of the recent years, and our underdog award winners, Ajax. Ajax that year was under the management of Erik ten Hag, who got his first big job with young talents from the academy such as Frenkie de Jong, Donny van de Beek and Matthijs de Ligt, supported by players with something to prove, such as Dusan Tadic, Hakim Ziyech or last Seszyna, the Dutch team, who finished runners-up of the domestic league a season before, famously knocked out Real Madrid in the round of 16 and Juventus in the quarter-finals. On the other side in the first semi-final was Tottenham, who also had some absolute scenes on the way, most famously knocking out Manchester City in the quarter-final. The Citizens already were a dominant English team, reaching a 100 points mark in the Premier League a season before. The team in light blue also scored what could be a winning goal, but Sergio Aguero was offside in the build-up. In the semi-final itself, Ajax won the first leg away 1-0. At home in Amsterdam, Ajax took a 2-0 lead and looked comfortable to advance to their first Champions League final in the 21st century. But Tottenham had a Brazilian winger by the name of Lucas Moura. This man, only in the second half, scored a hat-trick. The last of the 3 goals he scored was in the 96th minute, and that precise finish sent Tottenham to their first ever Champions League final. At Wanda Metropolitano in Madrid, new Atletico Madrid stadium, they faced Liverpool. And the Reds also have a wild storyline. Again, it's semi-final time. The opponents? Barcelona, with the top scorer of the competition, Lionel Messi, who scored 12 goals this season. One of them was a spectacular free kick against the Reds in the first leg of the semi-final at Nou Camp. But in the 90th minute of that first leg, a young winger Ousmane Dembele wasted a big chance to score a 4th goal. Barcelona was still leading 3-0 in the aggregate coming into Anfield, and they should quite comfortably keep that victory, right? History happened again. A duo from Liverpool, Divock Origi and Jorginho Wijnaldum, both scored a brace, with the last goal being probably the most iconic in this season. Trent Alexander-Arnold, Liverpool's homegrown right-back, was preparing to take the corner in the 17th minute, but realized Barcelona players were positioning themselves quite slowly. He quickly sent a low ball to Divock Origi, who scored the winning goal, and that goal completed another historical comeback and sent Liverpool to Madrid. This Champions League season is among the best ones of all time, and at the same time had a boring and cagey final. Liverpool, with goals from Mohamed Salah from a penalty and Divock Origi, won their 6th European Cup/Champions League, breaking Spain's 5-year-long dominance. This single season was just pure scenes anyway. Not to mention Manchester United's round of 16 aggregate against Paris Saint-Germain. In the 93rd minute, Presnel Kimpembe, Paris Saint-Germain's defender, blocked a shot. But it was deemed to be a handball, which resulted in Marcus Rashford stepping up and scoring a winning goal to send Red Devils to the quarter-final, even with Le Parisien winning the first leg 2-0 at Old Trafford. This Champions League season was a very weird one. Sports-wise, not really. At least not before the quarters. Maybe except Liverpool, who could have gone further than the round of 16. But it's all about what happened during said round of 16. In March of 2020, for quite obvious reasons, the world basically shut down for a couple of months. This forced a couple of changes when the world tried to get going again. First off, all games were played behind closed doors, with no fans to be seen. Second, the quarter and semi-finals were going to be played in the form of the single game, or in Lisbon's Estadio da Luz and Estadio José Alvalade, as a final 8 tournament. A format I personally find very entertaining. That new format saw some history as well. Bayern Munich played Barcelona in the quarter-final. In November 2019, the German side swapped their manager, Niko Kovac, after they were demolished 5-1 by Eintracht Frankfurt in the Bundesliga. The man who replaced Niko? His name was Hansi Flick. He was meant to be an interim manager, but turns out he would stay for longer. Hansi made an instant change to Bayern's tactics, introducing intense high pressing, storming counter-attacks, and a wing play. This made the prone-to-failure Bayern side instantly shine. Hansi helped Bayern win their group with a perfect record, breeze past Chelsea in the round of 16, and in the aforementioned quarter-final against Barcelona, score 8 goals. The 8-2 result at the end was the heaviest defeat Barcelona has suffered in 69 years. A total disaster, which led to Lionel Messi demanding to leave the club. Spoiler alert, he stayed for 1 more year. Manager Quique Setién getting sacked, and the Catalan team being exposed as no longer being among Europe's greatest. Bayern also defeated Lyon 3-0 in the semi-final to play against Paris Saint-Germain in the final. The road for the Frenchman wasn't that spectacular, beating Borussia Dortmund, Atalanta and RB Leipzig. Storytime. Throughout the years, Paris, the capital of France, didn't have a proper top club, and the merger of two teams Paris FC and Stade Saint-Germain in 1970 was meant to lift the city of Paris to the top of the French game. It worked, despite Guy Crescent, Paris FC's owner, leaving the merger just a year later. Kind of. I mean, sure, PSG was in the top flight, even winning 2 league titles in 1986 and 1994, and becoming runners-up 6 times in their history. Despite a number of talented players coming to the side, such as George Weah, JJ Okocha or Ronaldinho, it wasn't an elite team we know today. But in 2011, things took a massive twist. Qatar Sports Investments bought the club and put Nasser Al-Khelaifi as Paris Saint-Germain's president. Qatar is a little state in the Middle East, but a very rich one, which instantly made PSG one of the wealthiest clubs in the world, with a very simple ambition: win the Champions League. Domestically, things went great. PSG started to win the league nearly every season. Stars joined the club, such as Zlatan Ibrahimovic, Edinson Cavani, David Luiz or Thiago Motta. Now, in 2020, they had one of the best teams ever, including Brazilian superstar Neymar, who they signed for a record 222 million fee from Barcelona, France's wonderkid and already a 2018 World Cup winner Kylian Mbappe, signed for second highest 180 million, the Champions League winner with Real Madrid in 2014 Angel Di Maria, and the 2 Brazilian centre-backs in Marquinhos and Thiago Silva. With plenty of superstars, this was their chance to finally win their dream Champions League. A trophy Qatar Sports Investments have been dreaming about since they took over, and a trophy they watched fading away year by year. And their former player Kingsley Coman scored a lone goal for Bayern to clinch their 6th Champions League. The top scorer? Robert Lewandowski from Bayern Munich from Poland, with massive 15 goals, and a legitimate shout for the Ballon d'Or, which ultimately was cancelled. The Parisian side missed out on the trophy by the smallest of margins, but they had a chance to get revenge against Bayern just a year later. This season was almost fully played behind closed doors, but it still delivered. For example, Paris' chance for revenge against Bayern? It happened in the quarterfinal, with the second leg being arguably the most entertaining of the lockdown era. Intense pressing, Neymar's flair, a whole bunch of chances for both sides. What a game that was. PSG won the first match 3-2, but lost the second game 1-0. It was still enough to advance to the semi-finals thanks to away goals, but their Les Parisiens lost out to Manchester City. Storytime again. Unlike Paris, Manchester already had an elite club by the name of Manchester United. You might have heard of them, as we already talked about them in the context of 2 Champions League wins and 2 further finals. Manchester was red throughout the majority of football history, but it was about to change. There is another side in Manchester, called Manchester City. And sure, they were an established part of the First Division or Premier League most of the time, but they were no match for United. And in the late 2000s, things were getting worse and worse, with the financial situation being precarious. That saw a change in 2008, with Abu Dhabi United Group. Abu Dhabi is the capital of the United Arab Emirates, a little state in the Middle East, but a very rich one, which instantly made Manchester City one of the wealthiest clubs in the world, with a very simple ambition: win the Premier League and the Champions League. Domestically, things went great. Manchester City won their first league title of the century, following a dramatic finish to their title fight with the City rivals in 2012. In 2014 and since 2018, they kept winning more Premier League titles. Stars joined the club, such as the striker Sergio Aguero, a centre-back Vincent Kompany, and midfielders David Silva or Yaya Toure. Now in 2021, they had one of their best teams ever, under the management of one of the world's greatest managers, Pep Guardiola, including a Belgian playmaker Kevin De Bruyne, dynamic wingers Raheem Sterling, Riyad Mahrez or Bernardo Silva, a very solid backline with Ruben Dias, Aymeric Laporte or Kyle Walker, and a fantastic keeper in Ederson, with plenty of superstars. This was their chance to finally win their dream Champions League, a trophy the Emirati owners have been dreaming about since they took over, and a trophy they watched fading away year by year. This time, in Porto, in front of 14,000 people due to the restrictions, they could finally do it. And Chelsea's 22-year-old forward Kai Havertz scored a lone goal to put Chelsea ahead and win the Blues their second Champions League. Top scorer? You might have heard of this young man from Borussia Dortmund, a Norwegian Erling Haaland, who scored 10 goals this season. The citizens missed out on the trophy by the smallest of margins. Maybe, just maybe, they are missing a single piece up front. But the 2020-21 season brought one more saga, which included nearly all of the top teams. The Premier League's top 6 clubs, Juventus, Milan and Inter from Italy, and Barcelona, Real and Atletico Madrid from Spain, have planned out and created something called a European Super League. The goal was to create a brand new competition, in which a total of 15 founding clubs would be a permanent part of it, and the last 5 would be going through a qualifying mechanism. This had an intention of ensuring the top teams will play more games against each other, which would also be more accessible to watch. This would help get the younger audience more interested in the game, and would make much more money. The last 3 of the founding clubs were meant to be Borussia Dortmund, Bayern Munich and Paris Saint-Germain, but they all declined the invitation. On April 18, 2021, UEFA announced a major change to a format of all European competitions, which would turn the group stage into a massive league phase. We'll talk about it when the time comes. But on April 20, 2021, Florentino Perez, the chairman of Real Madrid, had one more announcement. He just said the European Super League has just been created. And he got a massive backlash, just like all the clubs taking part, which led to fans protesting in front of plenty of stadiums, most notably Chelsea's Stamford Bridge and Manchester United's Old Trafford. Literally within a couple of days, nearly all teams withdrew from the tournament, following a threat to ban the players from their national teams' competitions should they play in the Super League. Bunch of clubs from all over Europe released statements opposing the idea of the Super League, and pretty quickly, the tournament was cancelled. Though the idea still comes and goes around every now and then. It's nothing beyond a simple video explaining the format of the tournament. Manchester City got knocked out by Real Madrid in the Hold on! It wasn't a usual Real Madrid route to the final. It was a "we're clutching it like you've never even thought was possible" route to the final. In the round of 16, Real Madrid played Paris Saint-Germain. The French team got even stronger compared to a final they played 2 years ago. They signed Italy's #1 keeper, Gianluigi Donnarumma, Real Madrid's star centre-back Sergio Ramos, a midfielder Jorginho Wijnaldum from Liverpool, Morocco's star Achraf Hakimi, and this guy called Lionel Messi. You might have heard of him, even in this video. Probably, if you're paying attention. This is the team that won the first leg in Paris, and led after halftime in the second leg, thanks to a goal in each match from Kylian Mbappe. Real Madrid's Karim Benzema scored a hat-trick within 16 minutes. Then came the title holders Chelsea, though they were in the crisis as their owner Roman Abramovich was rushing to sell the club following Russia's invasion of Ukraine, which also subsequently banned all Russian teams from UEFA competitions. In the first leg in London, Los Blancos won 3-1, thanks to Benzema's another hat-trick. But at Santiago Bernabeu, Chelsea fought back, scored 3 goals and looked certain to advance. Rodrigo scored in the 80th minute, and in the extra time, Karim Benzema secured Real's progression. Then came the semi-final. The rivals, last season's runners-up, Manchester City. Hungry for glory, the citizens won the very entertaining game at their stadium. It was a 4-3 win for the English team. In Madrid, they confirmed their victory, with Riyad Mahrez scoring in the 73rd minute. Yup, they definitely confirmed they win, and they would be playing Liverpool in the final. Surely Real Madrid did not stage a comeback. They did. They just did it. They just went on and did it. This is probably the craziest run in the Champions League history. Liverpool went past Inter Milan, Benfica and Villarreal. But let's be honest, their route was not that chaotic. The final, hosted by Stade de France in Paris, started with a 37-minute delay. Security had trouble with the crowd, with some people, we're mainly talking about Liverpool fans, having valid tickets not being let inside the stadium, while some others had fake tickets or not at all, and just broke in. The trouble did not stop during and after the match, as many reports of crimes arose. Thankfully, nobody lost their life. When the match finally got going, we only saw one goal. You guessed it, Real Madrid scored, as Vinicius put the ball in the back of the net from close range. Top scorer, Karim Benzema, who helped Real Madrid win the Champions League with 15 goals. And also, say hi to Moldova. Sheriff Tiraspol became the first team from this small country to join Europe's elite, and they instantly win the Underdog Award. They stunned the world by winning in the 90th minute against later winners, Real Madrid. They qualified to the Europa League knockouts at the end, where they only lost out on penalties against Braga from Portugal. Manchester City probably found their missing piece that separated them from winning the Champions League. Erling Haaland. For just 60 million euros, a world-class striker joined Pep Guardiola's world-class team. and he instantly became the Champions League's top scorer with 12 goals. This tally includes 5 goals scored in a single game of the round of 16 against RB Leipzig, goals in both legs against Bayern Munich in the quarterfinals, and no goals against Real Madrid. But Erling's teammates scored 5 in total and took a successful revenge on Los Blancos for a year before, reaching their second final in 3 years. On the other side, after 13 long years, was Inter Milan. The team, managed by former Lazio player Simone Inzaghi, went past Porto, Benfica and AC Milan in the first Milan Champions League derby since 2005. In the Atatürk Olympic Stadium in Istanbul, it ended with a 1-0 win for Manchester City, after Rodri, a defensive midfielder, scored it to the bottom corner. And we also witnessed Romelu Lukaku with the most luck ever to be seen. Manchester City have finally won the Champions League for the first time ever. But this was overshadowed by 115 financial charges, sending shockwaves in the footballing world. So far, in the end of July of 2025, Man City faced no consequences, and it looks like, if anything, it will stop with a financial fine. The Underdog Award goes to Club Brugge. They are the only team from outside the top 6 leagues to make it to the knockouts, so the choice was obvious here. Real Madrid comes back in clutch. Los Blancos got past Manchester City in the quarterfinal through a dramatic penalty shootout, which saw Ederson, Manchester City's goalkeeper, take the spot kick in the deciding 5th round. He scored, but his teammates Bernardo Silva and Mateo Kovacic did not, letting Real through. In the semi-final, they met Bayern Munich and were set to be eliminated after a 2-2 draw in Munich and a 1-0 loss in Madrid. But Joselu, Real Madrid's new striker on loan, came in clutch. He scored 2 goals in the 88th and 91st minute to save his team and lead it to Wembley. On the other side was Borussia Dortmund. The German side made it to the final for the first time since 2013. They got past PSV Eindhoven, Atletico Madrid and Paris Saint-Germain. Quite an unexpected finalist after all. Dortmund had an advantage and created more chances in the first half, but the later it was, the more clinical Real Madrid was. Dani Carvajal and Vinicius Jr. both scored a goal and led Los Blancos to a record-extending 15th Champions League title. Just for comparison, second AC Milan has only 7 trophies in their collection. Top scorer? Actually, top scorers? Harry Kane from Bayern and Kylian Mbappe from Paris Saint-Germain, who scored 8 goals each. The Underdog Award winner? The choice is obvious here. FC Copenhagen from Denmark. They made it to the round of 16, getting a draw against Bayern, a 4-3 win against Manchester United, and an away draw and a home win against Galatasaray. Copenhagen got knocked out by Manchester City in the knockouts, but did put up a fight. UEFA potentially learned from a scare that was the proposal of the European Super League. Or they just tried to fulfill their desire to make more money. I don't know. The group stage has been absolutely demolished. In its place, welcome the league stage. Probably the biggest reform of the competition ever. We're playing 8 games instead of 6, in a Swiss system, where you get 2 opponents from each pot of 9 teams. Speaking of 9 teams, there are 4 pots, which means 4 more clubs are invited to the party. But 9 groups of 4 doesn't make sense. That's why you have a massive league table instead. The top 8 teams go directly to the round of 16, while the teams from 9th to 24th are battling it out in an additional knockout playoff round. Anyone lower? You're out of Europe entirely. From there on, it's a normal 2-leg knockout stage, until the final. Are you catching up with me right now? Me neither. RB Leipzig did not catch up either and got eliminated, while Manchester City barely escaped the drop after a disaster of a mid-season, but got eliminated by Real Madrid in that knockout playoff round. Real Madrid got knocked out by Arsenal in the quarterfinals, after Declan Rice scored 2 perfect free kicks in just 12 minutes. But Arsenal were knocked out quite confidently by Paris Saint-Germain in the semi-final. On the other side of Allianz Arena in Munich was Inter Milan again. Initially, their road to the final was quiet, but in the semi-final, things got wild against Barcelona. In Barcelona, it was a 3-3 draw, and the draw was happening at San Siro again, until Rafinha scored the leading goal for Barcelona 87 minutes in. Just 3 minutes later, Lamine Yamal hit the post, and that would prove to be disastrous, because in the 93rd minute, a 37-year-old centre-back Francesco Acerbi scored a massive equalizer to give Inter the extra time. In it, Daniel Fratesi gave Inter the winning edge in the 19th minute, which Inter kept and went to the final only to be demolished 5-0 by Paris Saint-Germain, which is the biggest margin of victory in the UEFA Champions League final ever. Paris Saint-Germain got rid of their superstars like Messi, Ramos, Neymar or Mbappe, and under the manager Luis Enrique, they developed a perfect mix of youth and experience. This was enough to finally let Paris lift Europe's elite prize. The top scorer award went to two people, Rafinha from Barcelona and Sergio Guirassy from Borussia Dortmund. They scored 13 goals each. And the underdog award? I'm giving this one to Club Brugge. The Belgian team just qualified to the knockouts, and there they got past Atalanta, who finished the league stage on 9th. In the round of 16, Aston Villa got past the Belgians 6-1 on aggregate. It was a wild ride, wasn't it? I wonder what the next seasons will deliver, because there is much more to be added to this story. Maybe the Super League is not the best of ideas after all, because it wouldn't have as much aura to it compared to the UCL. But what do you think? Which season was your favorite? Who is going to win the next edition? And what is your own personal dream about this competition? Let me know in the comments down below. I hope you enjoyed this video. If that's the case, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. This took months to create, and a simple subscription is a great free way to appreciate the time I spent on this, and the time you spent watching as well.